So, Peter, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And it's been many years that we have been, back in the day in Bangkok, and you're actually in Bangkok now. So, with over 50 years of hospitality and, currently leading the operations at JW Marriott in Bangkok, I mean, you bring an incredible depth of experience from operations to financial leadership, owner relations, and also on the sustainability side. So, also on a personal note, I understand that you've been engaging with students at Hong Kong Poly U, which is close to my own journey in the industry. So, I'm really looking forward to exploring that with you as well. So, anyway, let's start at the beginning, Peter. What actually drew you into hospitality, and do you have like a sense of a time when it kind of clicked that it would become a long lifetime sort of career?
But thanks for the introduction, Richard. It's a pleasure talking to you. And you're indeed right. It has been a while.
Yeah,
I, I grew up in a small resort, a ski resort in Switzerland in Davos. My father was a bookkeeper, and it was very clear I would take over his business. And after graduation in college, he said I go to a Swiss bank to prepare myself for his job, for his office. So I did. And on the first day, I did feel it was so wrong that I'm in a bank, and I tell you why. In the banks in those days, even I made it to the customer, but there was this big window.
yeah,
Actually, it's a bulletproof glass that when somebody wants to rob the bank, you don't get shot. So I really felt like in a prison myself, and the customer is outside. And being in a small village, so to speak, where I knew half of the people, I felt, God, these people see me in the prison and
right,
they are outside. I cannot function. So I was only 9 months on the bank, out of which it took 6 months to convince my father that I don't want to do that. So
right.
eventually, the parents, we grew up, baby boomers, we grew up listening to our parents. That's quite different now. Now we are parents, we're listening to the kids.
Yeah,
But the point is, my father agreed, and I went to the next building, which was a hotel, as a trainee. And from the first day, I knew this is what I want to do
mm,
because the interaction with the people, no window else, you could shake hands, you could be friendly with people. There was not a pre-scripted language, to get your own money like in the bank. I knew on day one, that's it. I just didn't know how long I would stay. But I had a plan. I think I was about 28, well, probably less, 25,
mm,
26. I knew I want to do hotel school and I want to be GM when I'm 35. And
okay,
last part about your question, in those days, we really had to work ourselves up. You could not just come from outside and become number two or number one like nowadays. We need to learn the ropes. So I did seasonal jobs, and I was looking that season after season I can grow in my job. And I knew it's going to be a lifetime job. Anything else would be a surprise.
right. But that's interesting. I mean, when I look back on my kind of career, I often think of turning points, and usually it was because someone gave me an opportunity. There was like somebody took a chance with me. Um, like you, I also had a lot of like jobs through college, working as a waiter and in kitchens, even selling ice cream. But it wasn't until this guy gave me an opportunity to run a hotel in the Virgin Islands with him, and he kind of just took a chance on me. And I was wondering, when you look back, was there like a real turning point? Do you think that shaped your path?
Well, the turning point was when I left home, the
Right.
mountains. I was a mountain boy, still am somehow. I could not be without mountains, without snow, without the four seasons. I did go 2 years to Munich, to quite a famous hotel, the Bayerische Hof. which is in the Bavarian side of Germany. You could say it's almost like home. That was kind of my first, I got the first idea of internationality.
Okay.
I figured out, wow, I mean, Davos, that's nice. Seasonal jobs at the Lake of Geneva and then back to Davos in winter, that's nice. But there is something else, like really international hotel business. So that caught on me. I did go back to Davos, but I had a wish that eventually I want to go abroad. I sent, I think, 60 applications to America because at that time we were all kind of focused going to the US. Nobody answered, you know. And then finally, I saw an advert in the Swiss hotel newspaper that the Peninsula Hong Kong is looking for a assistant front office manager.
I
I
see.
I applied, one application, and after the 60, which led to nothing, I got an interview because what happens at that time, Peninsula was more or less under Swiss management, and they took Swiss hotel graduates. So I can say already at this point of our conversation,
Yeah.
it was quite, it happened a few times that the Swiss passport and the Swiss education was helpful. I don't want to say regardless of who I was and where I was in my professional knowledge, but it was helpful. So
Right.
turning point, turning
Right.
point.
That's very interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting because I think that yeah, I can remember doing the same thing. I remember applying for jobs in South Africa. Remember there was a lot of resorts opening in South Africa and like the also
Southern
the
or something.
Southern
Southern.
Suns. Yeah, Southern Sun. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And also in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, there was a lot
Yeah.
of stuff going on there. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so we must be a similar kind of age actually. I think that so I mean over these decades that you and I have seen the role of a GM change, right? I mean, I think now when you look back how it's changed, what do you think sort of separates a good GM from an exceptional one, a great GM from an exceptional one, given the situation these days?
Well, to go back quickly to where we came from,
Yeah,
in those days we just learned operations. And through learning operations, we realized how important it is to take care of the customer. That's why I left the bank. The bank is just a transformational customer relation, but in the hotel, it's to create experiences. And this is really what makes the difference. I told you I got some positions because I was still am a Swiss passport holder, but once the position was given, we were thrown into the cold water and had to swim. Particularly when I came from Davos directly to the Peninsula Hong Kong, that was a big deal, and I had to forget 4 months of my life.
yeah,
But we learned our ropes through that. What differentiates a exceptional GM? An exceptional GM goes, I would say, beyond operations. Just leave operations like it's basic necessity. The first thing I learned in Hong Kong, a little bit less so because it was still a British colony, but certainly in Thailand, culture. I'm working here for an American company in an Asian country with a huge country culture, and we can only be successful. I wouldn't really call it exceptional, but I realized that not everybody and not every company embraces culture. It's actually one of the things I've also shared in Polyu in Hong Kong.
yeah,
How to marry or get the best out of a company culture and the country culture, get them together for the benefit of the business.
right.
No, you're British, I'm Swiss, but generally we are Caucasian European, so we come off the same neck of origin. Our origin is from the same neck of woods. And here in Thailand, I learned one thing: I have to assimilate into the culture. The policies and procedures are just meaningless if I do not understand, respect, and show that I respect the culture. So I think that's an exceptional thing, and every foreigner. who comes to work with me together. He goes through a medium, big or small, whatever you call it, culture brief to make
Yeah.
sure we get it right from the beginning. So
Yeah.
culture. So we have the operations, we have the culture, and it is also the emotional intelligence. I think in the bank it's all transactional, although we have become more transactional through the technology, like we used to be, with the NCR 42, and we
Right.
used
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the emotional intelligence. That's not something we learn. And by the way, even in the hotel schools today, I'm surprised culture isn't such a big. It's not on
Mm.
the big screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know I answer your question, but it's perhaps not exceptional, but it's a differentiator.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that from my own perspective, I completely understand what you mean because having worked in different countries where they have different cultures, like Indonesia, in Bahrain, in the Virgin Islands, and then in China where there was not really any. It's kind of it wasn't really Buddhist, it wasn't Christian, it wasn't. They had no kind of moral compass in some respect, I would say, back in those early days. And so you could see working in Thailand actually took a lot of the pain out of running because people were being very nice to one another. People are naturally very gracious and kind and thoughtful. And I think that whole Asian hospitality is very different. I think you notice it a lot when you're flying on in airlines as well, different airline brands, European airlines versus Asian airlines versus American airlines. The whole culture. I mean, the plane is identical, got the same number of crew, right? The only thing that's different is the culture of the people, and you really notice it there. So I totally agree with you. But having that aspect, I mean, how do you balance then for you the guest experience with now the very tough sort of financial realities of running a hotel? How do you find that balance?
Well, looking back again first, guest experience was all what counted. If I
Yeah,
think back at the Peninsula days, even to some extent to the Shangri-La days, guest experience mattered. But I would say today, looking back, Shangri-La was already much more financially focused in those days, in the mid 80s, early 90s, than Peninsula was. We knew there is something like financial management, but it wasn't really on our top radar screen. Then coming to Shangri-La, where I also had a more senior position, I was a number two there, resident manager. I realized, ooh, you cannot just spend money endlessly just because the customer expects it. So it's a bit a fine, a slim balance we need to a small way. How should I say it the right way? It's a small distinction between guest satisfaction and financial success.
right,
It's
right.
sensitive.
Yeah,
And now that we have more crises than like ever before, I believe now we are just in another one. Money comes up quite quickly. And just today we had a conference call and we said we were told we need to manage the money. We need to go into cost savings without reducing guest experiences, quality, and guest services.
right, right.
Now, this is like asking a fish to run or an animal from the forest to swim
Yeah,
long distance. So it's not easy to do. I think to crack that code, Richard, we need the brains around the table from the leadership and from the executive committee.
right,
The accountant will always tell us what he can save to the maximum. And then the operator, is it rooms division or is it food and beverage? They come and say, no, 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 no. You cannot, 200-gram steak has to be 200 grams. It cannot be 180, right? And then the decision the common sense decision is with us. So I would say, to answer your question, it's a common sense matter to make the best decision to balance both the guest experience and the financial expectations from the owners. And if the common sense doesn't prevail, I'm not shy to go and check back with the owners or Marriott, because I have two stakeholders on left and right, as you know, to make sure we run in the right direction.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very good point. And I think that that's something that we can talk about a little bit later when we talk about sustainability, about balancing the luxury with the realities of sustainability. And I always used to be surprised that actually the things that the guests do notice, that if you take something away or you change the quality of something, they notice very, very quickly. So, as you say, owner relations is very important, and you've worked extensively with owners, something that's not fully understood from the outside. I think that I mean, even when I was at Icon, I had stakeholders that were students. I had stakeholders that were the faculty from the university, stakeholders that were the owners, the government who'd actually given the land, and then you had, the actual guests themselves. So there were many multiple stakeholders there. But from your perspective, what's the key to managing those relationships, Peter? What's the key to managing them well? Let's say.
Well, the setup is such that the building is owned by the owners. The owners make a management fund contract, in this case with Marriott, or it can be Shangri-La, anybody. No, actually, Shangri-La, they own it too, right? Shangri-La, Rosewood, and Peninsula, is the three groups which own and manage themselves. But Marriott, Hilton's, Hyatt, Intercons, they manage on behalf of others. That's what I have been doing for the longest of time now. So the number one respect goes to the owner, because they have decided to give their business to us in the first place and not to somebody else. So that said, a GM's job, being the main contact and the main person on the owner side, and being the representative of Marriott, representing all what Marriott brings to the table, the GM is in a way first in the firing line. Clearly, if an owner is unhappy with a GM, within 3 months, there will be a new GM in the seat.
Hmm.
If the owner is happy with the GM over time, then there is a certain longevity coming with the job. I did not plan to be 23 years in the same building. I do not say I have done everything right, that's why I'm still here. But it so happens, my owners, they are, let's say, on the conservative side. They understand the business truly and thoroughly,
Right.
but they are very understanding to the market, to the variables, and to how we conduct our business. And that's not available everywhere. You mentioned China. Generally, Chinese owners are much more difficult in many ways how they see what we do.
Hmm.
I worked for other owners here also, who are, no owner is easy.
Yeah.
Ownership is not meant to clap us and tell us every day how good we are. So I communicate to my owners like I would say to my parents, to my good friends. I maintain a cordial relationship. When the rubber hits the road, then we sit together and we talk. And often it is the case that owners see outcomes different than what Marriott would believe they should be, because Marriott also has a set of policies and a set of ideas how to overcome a crisis or how to overcome a situation. So then I'm the mediator. The truth is, by management contract, say now in this case Marriott or any other company has almost the full right to execute anything in the hotel. The reality on the other side is that the owners in Asia, often being families, also in my case, families who have hotels, they get involved almost on a daily basis. So we have to strike a balance, and I cannot upset either one of them.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, I'm employed by Marriott. My salary is negotiated by Marriott, but naturally it goes out of the owner's P&L, like all the excom. So the last thing I would say on this, a successful stint for a GM has to include both sides.
Yeah.
We cannot be political, we cannot be preferential, but we have to see that sometimes it's a compromise, but
Right.
better a compromise than
Yeah.
a disaster.
Right. Right. And I think that's a very interesting answer because often the development team are going out selling and this selling the brand, right? And there's certain expectations, um, and then if you're falling short, sometimes it's something out of your control. Maybe they over, they they kind of were a bit, overly enthusiastic and too, you know too much of the emphasis was on making money rather than on reputation and brand. And of course, with a lot of Asian owners, it's the fact that it's their hotel and that what their friends and associates think based on the reputation. So that's a very good point. I was just curious: have you ever been in a hotel working for an owner or working for a brand where the owners actually ever come to you and said, "Look, we want to run this independently. Would you set it up for us independently?" Has that ever happened to you? I mean, you don't have to say who or where, but I'm just curious because you are a great operator and you have a legacy and a reputation. Have they ever tried to sort of tease you away from the brand to work for them exclusively?
No, the short answer is no, not me as a person. But in one of the in my first Marriott in which I worked, that was a franchise agreement. So essentially, I'm looking now at you, and you're the owner, and I dealt with you, and we just used the Marriott network for reservations and so on and
Okay,
so forth.
right,
So
right,
in many ways that was easier. That particular owner also had his own brand and his own hotels. As part of my job to look after that particular Marriott hotel in Bangkok, I looked also after some of his brands, his own brands. We even opened a hotel in Haiphong. So I had some dual jobs, and I got to see how the owner works. And that hotel in Haiphong and the other hotels here there were about four of them under the owner brand. Naturally, inadvertently, or probably also on purpose, we use some of the Marriott policies to help those hotels. So it was kind of a mix and mash, right?
Mm, mm.
But at the end of the day, those hotels remained independent.
Yeah.
The one which was franchised and he had some other ones managed, they stayed like that. But over time, now fast forward to today, he did change. And sometimes the operator, meaning the brand, or
Okay.
does it himself alone in the first place.
Okay.
But I myself was never involved in such a switch during my
Yeah.
career.
Okay. So moving on to this issue around sustainability and technology, and I'm always interested in how big brands like Marriott, because if you're doing sustainable practices, how much of the decision making is sort of left to you or your GMs, and how much of it is like driven by corporate policy as far as, let's say you wanted to say collaborate with a local partner on a sustainable product, or like we used to do at Hotel Icon. We would work with different suppliers. In fact, they would come to us and say, we know you're a teaching research hotel. We'd like to test this product out with you, and then we would help them to get PR if it worked out well. So we did a lot of collaborations like that with you, and with sustainability now sort of front and center and people talking about it. I was just wondering, what was your approach and how is it evolved over the years?
Let me say that. I mean, sustainability, when we grew up into our jobs, nobody talked about it.
No.
We kind of knew, we knew a little bit about the trash, but
Yeah.
that was it. And
Yeah.
then at one point of time, say from 2000, after 2000, 2010, it started to become, it got on the radar. Well, talking about Marriott, Marriott has a vehicle in place wherever they operate hotels, where we operate hotels. There is a vehicle in place called business councils. Now that has not, it doesn't even mention sustainability. What business councils are doing, they're representing the brand as a group in a market when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to disasters, earthquake, and community support. And there is a business council chair appointed. This chair will always be a GM, and it is seen also as a development for those GMs because we all take care of a building, but to work together and be successful in a peer group of the same level without a direct reporting line, that helps the individual too. So, to cut to the chase, I became chairman of the Thailand Business Council in 2005. I had this position until 2011. In 2010, I became the guidance team leader for Asia Pacific. So by now, many countries have business council. At the time in 2010, there were 4 countries having business councils in Asia Pacific. By now, it's 12. And many, like big countries like India, they have sub councils. So there is a structure in place amongst GMs,
Yeah.
inclusive nowadays next gen business councils, which is a younger group. They have their own agenda, but the focus is all the same. We call it Serve 360. Do good in all directions. So, as I said, community, nurture, diversity, uh, the uh, the food waste, and
Yeah.
so on.
Okay.
And it's a very structured. Anything we do in Marriott is structured. I have now been the guidance team leader for 21 years.
Wow.
Yes, yesterday, 31st of March, was officially my last day because
Wow.
I handed over to a successor, the Asia Pacific, APEC, that means except China, because when Marriott merged with Starwood, China became a separate entity within the company. Before it was Asia and China together. So I used to look after China as well in those
Mm,
days.
mm, mm.
So that's the structure. So what we're doing is anything sustainability. We have some corporate expectations. So we work, for example, I can say that with UNICEF, that's on a global level.
Right.
Then in Asia Pacific, we work often with charities taking care of children
Okay.
needs. And
Right.
then locally, that was to your question, we have the ability and the freedom to engage with local suppliers, be it the food, be it locally sourced, having people, we work together to convert plastic into boots, to convert used oil into biofuel, and so on and so on. So we have 3 layers: global, continental, and local.
That's
And
very interesting.
we
Okay.
report out
Yeah.
like P&L. There's a platform. It's called JRI, Just Reported, and every quarter the production, whatever the business councils did, will be reviewed.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. So that it's great that a brand like Marriott is really making a lot of progress in this area. And because I remember one of the things we used to find in Hong Kong is, with those, those minibuses, the green and the red ones that go around Hong Kong and Tsim Sha Tsui and all that area.
Mhm.
Because Icon was all about, the future and trying to be the whole the kind of business model of it was the fact that the hotel never had to borrow money from the university. It made money, and it gave money back to the university for the purpose of education. So it was like a kind of perfect CSR model in a way. So we were actually encouraged to do a lot of prototyping and research and experimenting with different approaches. And I remember when we decided to try and create an electric minibus, like one of those exact buses that take people around. So when we would do like shuttle bus pickups from the airport and from the ferry terminal. And we actually prototyped with a battery manufacturing company, actually a battery, and they made this minibus for us. And we got a grant from the government, very, very successful. We ended up with three of them. And then there was another one where we worked with a company who made uniforms from fabric made from bamboo, from maize, from plastic bottles. And then they also use AI to design the uniform. So you put all the brand DNA information in, whether it's a coffee shop or a Chinese restaurant, and then it would create renderings. So you didn't need a designer. It was able to do that. And they're actually still functioning and doing quite well. So things like that, where we were really encouraged to kind of think outside the box. So I wondered, from your perspective, what do you think hotels should be focusing on, say, over the next 5 to 10 years in this area?
Well, it's a big task, sustainability. What I realized through my involvements in our corporate social responsibility, those business councils, every single every single contribution matters. Imagine my hotel here. We started to measure food waste in 2017. So we went through the whole process to check what we throw away, what can be reused, what can be given away to poor people to eat, what we have to throw away, what we can repurpose, and so on and so forth. Last year, we saved the equivalent of 8.5 elephants food, and assuming an elephant is 3.5 tons,
Yeah,
we saved, which didn't go in the buffet and get thrown away. So there's you serve less, which means you throw away less. You repurpose, you give away what's still edible. You the repurposing, we do candies out of coffee grind, and many things. One
yeah,
hotel.
yeah.
By
Very
now
good.
in Asia Pacific, there are about 450, 500 hotels, and most of them participate in the business councils. So there is an expectation that these hotels do the same thing like we do. And now all of a sudden, the snowball effect, you
Okay.
understand what I mean?
Yeah, got it.
And Marriott does that in the whole world. There are 5 continents, inclusive Asia Pacific. Another one is China, naturally America, and everyone does the same in the same direction in local basis, in their country, and globally. So that makes an impact. It will not save the world per se, but it is, at the beginning, it was just a feel good thing to do.
Yes.
By now, it's a must thing to do, and it is not only feeling good a must, it is also good for business. Because when we work with corporate accounts, half of them ask us, what exactly is it what we do for CSR?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
we prove what we do? So we have our CSR reports, and they would only send their people to hotels which are conscious and concerned and proactive in this space.
So it is important. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you talk about this? I mean, actually, this leads into the next question about mentorship and education. And I just wondered how much of this do you share with the students? I know that you've been mentoring and guest lecturing at SHTM PolyU. Um, do you talk to them a lot about this? What is a lot of your subject matter about, Peter?
This is the most the one most in demand.
Yeah,
I have been there 4 times in the last 2 years,
right.
and the sustainability piece, and I always rework it and update it, is the one they're interested. The
Interesting.
next gen, because they live longer than us, they seem to be more, no, they are born more conscious about what can go wrong with planet Earth where we're living on. When we were born, we didn't have real great understanding. I was lucky enough to grow up in nature, in the mountains, and a lot of forests. But if we don't take care of them, so the point is, they understand and they are very critical in their questions. I can tell you, I can in no lecture, I wouldn't say lecture, in no appearance I give, I could answer all the questions to their 100% satisfaction. Because when we do a business, where we do a business, there will be some emissions. We cannot possibly go down to zero in everything we do unless we close the business. Then there are no emissions, but then there is also there is no profit. There is, there are no jobs. So there are whole. This is all interlinked, and like anything, like I talked to you about the financial versus the guest experience, it's interlinked and we have to find the right balance. Will there ever be no food waste and no landfill? No. But as long as we reduce it in a meaningful way and we become bigger in what we're doing, meaning we save more and we reduce the landfill because also new hotels come online, then that's the best we can do as a company here and now for this generation. And now the next generation, represented through the Next Gen Business Council, they will take over from what we started and probably have a whole lot of new ideas how to accelerate that and how to increase that. So I wouldn't say we are really pioneers, but in some ways we have been pioneering this sustainability ever since you and me
Yeah.
through the ranks.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I'm really pleased to hear that they encourage you through this business council to experiment and share ideas. So people down the line can kind of come up with an idea, and if they think it's going to generate more money or save money, and add some value to the company, that's really great. So what do you actually enjoy about working with these students these days? And I mean, how do you find them coming into hospitality? Are they wide-eyed and clueless, or do they think that what is your view? I mean, I'm just interested from your perspective because you and I are from a similar generation. We both taught at the same facility there, to that same kind of cohort group of students. What is your impression?
well, I think you could answer the question actually better because you were more involved. You opened the hotel there, which is sitting on top of the university. I'm just a guest speaker. But what I can say, you know, I never thought of myself standing in front of a student group and saying something meaningful. But COVID changed that, When COVID happened and we closed down hotels like ours and everything collapsed on us and came to a standstill, and I had some break. So to say, all of us, we had a break to say, what are we doing? What's next? This is when I started to realize I want to give something back. I want to share experiences for better or for worse, but they can do with my information what they find is useful. That's when I started. And to your question, the curiosity which they put through to us, being the experienced, the mature. the executives is tremendous. They are, I mean, there's a joke. Why is it called Generation Y and so on? Because they always ask why. But they have a good reason to do that. And while I didn't really understand them before COVID, during COVID, I started to go deep with my own team because we had time. I had contacts with my associates I never have in a day to day operation. I started to appreciate their curiosity. I started to appreciate the way they want to learn. And I tell you something, Richard, when I go to these schools and I see what they're learning, I'm surprised how narrow and how little our curriculum was in those days in terms of the material we had to know and to learn to get the degree. It is
Yeah,
just unbelievable how educated they are on a wider basis and also in the hospitality at large. And the last point on that, you know, I go to Singapore, I go to Hong Kong, I go to my own school in Switzerland. Also, there naturally there are cultural differences. I don't have a problem with my own cultures. Back home, I have no problem with any culture. But in some universities, there is more a hesitance because I'm the senior guy to approach me with questions. So
yeah,
it's not easy to get them out of the skin. And notice they are just free from their heart and there's tons of questions and Q&A doesn't stop. I enjoy Q&A the most.
right, right. Yeah, I think that my son is actually in hotel school here in England, actually, Oxford Brookes, and he's in his first year. And because he grew up as a kid in Hong Kong with me, and he understands how hotels operate and everything. But I think he is obviously more prepared for the realities because his dad is a hotelier, right? Do you think a lot of these students are have a kind of a surreal idea about what the industry is, and how can we encourage more students to enter it? Because it doesn't the hospitality industry these days, certainly in this country, in England, doesn't have such a great reputation, and how do you think we can encourage more students to enter the industry, and how is Marriott encouraging that effort?
Well, I think in different countries there would be different answers. Around here in Asia, the hospitality university, that degree is seen as a general degree. It's not the most difficult one to achieve. The surprising part is every time I show up somewhere, I say, I'm a general manager. Who of you in the room ever wants to become a general manager? And I tell you, almost nobody.
No, that's right. I noticed that too.
So,
Yeah,
so then I first I saw myself, what are they doing here? Point is, they can go into different industries.
yeah, yeah,
The hospitality degree opens today a lot of different opportunities job wise. You know, we went to hotel school and we became hoteliers. That was
yeah,
this silo thinking. But
yeah,
now it's wide open, and I think that's a fantastic thing. The problem is that is naturally we don't get enough people through the door to
yeah.
fill all the new hotels.
Right.
So, which brings me to the second question here: how do we make hospitality interesting? And there has to be a degree of personal interest. We cannot force or convince somebody against their will to go to hospitality because the truth is, Richard, we still have 3 shifts a day.
Yeah,
Our hotels are open on the weekends.
yeah,
So that will not change. I should have stayed on the bank because, from work-life balance, but it is called work life balance. It's not called
right,
life work balance. And I
right.
keep saying that too. So, a certain investment wherever we go or wherever the next generation goes, has to be accepted for them to be successful. It's not a walk in the park to become CEO in any industry. So, what I'm telling them, it's a colorful industry. We are in the people industry where we can talk, we can interchange, we have guests, we have associates. Anytime I have 1,200 people in this building, so it is really a satisfying environment to be, as opposed to manufacturing or banking, as you know by now,
Yeah.
where everything is a bit rigid. And if these people have this kind of gender and this kind of DNA, then they will end up with us.
That's a very good point. And I think, if I look back over my time, I think a lot of, I can kind of hear it coming from you too, because if someone was to say to me, what are the key things that you think a great hotelier or good hotelier or somebody entering in the industry must have? For me, one of them is the ability to communicate. You must be able to communicate effectively, because sometimes we're standing up talking to an owner or selling an idea or communicating to our team. And the other thing is to be able to sort of enrich other people's lives in some way, to sort of touch them in some way that makes them feel valued. Those two things, just that communication and sort of enriching people's lives. I think that you're right. When they're learning so diverse issues, sometimes you just have to come back to the basics. How good are you as a communicator, to some of these young people? Because a lot of them, as you say, they came up through COVID, they always on their phone chatting with people. But when you put them in a face to face situation, how do they talk? What do they talk about? How do they hold themselves? How do they groom themselves? These are very basic things that sometimes we take for granted, you know.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I think that you really nailed it earlier. It is about making people feel special and in touching them in some shape or form, enriching their lives. It's about you know all those things that you've talked. But it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. If there was one sort of final thought, what still excites you now about hospitality?
Well, you just mentioned it almost in as many words as I want to say it. What we do is, never mind the execution, which we need to understand and get under our belt, but we create experiences every day, not only for the customer, but also for the staff, for the associates. You know, we have trainees here, international, Asian, and Thais, like every week of the year. So instead of just calling them trainees and say, yeah, now you come and take away the dirty dishes. It's an experience, because the fact, I believe, that's my personal opinion, even though every school requires the students to do a certain amount of months of internships, at the end of the day, when they graduate and they really now are post graduation, there is a gap of practical understanding what is required in terms of personal engagement, in terms of what is needed to create these experiences. You know, to come in 3 months and then zoom out again, that's better than nothing. But at the end of the day, once you have your feet firmly back on both feet back on the ground, and you're walking now into your career, this step is still not a small one. And I try to communicate that the more you are hands-on during your education, the more you see practical experiences, because the academical output they get, or input actually, is second to none. That's twice, three times as much as we got.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, a hotel basically still the same what it used to be. We call it now create experiences, make the guest happy, because if the guest is happy, he comes back. The story is the same. We have different approaches by different companies, being different individuals, different personalities, but I still say the GM job, and that's what keeps me, is the best job in the industry. General manager. I'm not a specialist, but I'm knowing I can stand in front of a boiler. I couldn't repair it, but I know what it does. So we are generally involved, and this kind of broad uh, this broad understanding and this broad exposure we get, wouldn't want to miss it. Now,
Yeah.
that being said, it's clear I don't work until I'm not dying in the hotel, but I at one point of time will stop and
Yeah.
hand over. That's quite clear.
Well, maybe you can, you know, diversify into lecturing or teaching. I mean, that's something I found very, very rewarding, as you say, because you feel it's time to give something back. And, you know, if you can mentor people, I mean, I mentor quite a lot of people, even to this day, they, you know, call me, ask me for advice and things like that. And it's very touching. You know, they appreciate it tremendously, and it is a bit of a minefield out there. So if you can help somebody, you know, it makes a big difference. But Peter, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing your experience and insights so beautifully and so openly. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Well,
Thanks a
same
lot.
here. It's a pleasure to talk somebody who understands the industry, and as we already established, same generation, same neck of the woods. So we both have the understanding of what we're talking about, and that makes it pleasurable. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Peter. Thank you.